Hi there, and welcome to another episode of CEO Chairside. I'm Dr. Greg Grillo, and I told you last time that I would have a special guest with me today. And I'm here with Dr. Amanda Tavoularis. How are you doing today?
Really good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, a little disclaimer. We've known each other just a couple of years, times something. I'm not sure how many it is, but it's a lot of years. How long has it been?
Since we just had our 30th anniversary of our dental class reunion, I think about 30.
Hey, we're still pretty sharp, if we can figure that one out. We're not doing too bad, right? Yes, it's been just a few years, and it's been an honor for me to have a friendship with Dr. Tavoularis, but also to see what she's done in her unique journey through dentistry. And I think that's really part of why we do this is to hear each other's stories and to get little pieces of wisdom, just those little pearls that make a big difference in our individual journey. So let's just kind of go back a few years. I mean, we can go back 30 years, we can go back more if you want. Depends, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about your journey and what first really inspired you to pursue dentistry as a profession?
Great question. It's so funny to think way back. So many things form your path. It was, my mother's always, she's amazing. She was always saying, do your best, strive for the highest point. At that point in time, it was medicine. So I was programmed kind of from a young age to be a doctor. Then I saw someone die and thought, that's not for me. I can't do it. So I was at UC Irvine going to college and I took a lot of the school aptitude tests and I realized I really liked dealing with business. I was thinking about an MBA at the time. I had just come out of doing lengthy research. I did a lot of research with Alzheimer's, but being trapped in four walls didn't really do it for me. So I thought I wanted something with healthcare that combined business and just wanted to be with people and explore that side, right? And have it be more kind of a more warm path than a research, white sterile environment. So I think that's what got me started. Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty good start. I think it's interesting. A lot of us had maybe different ideas in dentistry to start with. I know that I followed a surgeon around for on a spring break once because I thought I wanted to become a surgeon. And he said, if you don't, basically eat, drink, live, breathe this, then don't do it. And I knew that wasn't quite what I wanted. So, anyway, how we get to these places is all kind of interesting. And your path as you went through dentistry, we won't tell any dental school stories here today. It's probably best to leave those alone. But you've had a pretty remarkable path as you built a practice that was unique. You became a COIS mentor, and a lot of dentists know what that means, but you could share a little bit about that as well. But what was really that kind of pivotal moment when you realized that in your practice that something had to change or you needed to go a direction that really resonated with your values?
Great questions. That's another thing I love, about being your friend for this many years. You're very insightful and you ask excellent questions. I would say there was one definite pivotal moment. I felt like we were really prepared out of dental school. I guess you don't know any different when you first get out. I was in a partnership practice, two space sharing partners. I'd just come off of a hands-on veneer course and thought, I'm doing great. I know how to do veneers now. A lady named Karen, not a typical Karen. She was a neighbor. She came to me. Her husband, they just happened to have had a messy divorce. He owned one of the premier jean brands at the time. So it was kind of a high profile case. And I nailed it. I did her number 8 veneer. It was beautiful. And I thought, I'm a star. And then she came through hygiene about 6 months later. I think it was 4 power loops at the time, maybe 6 then. I saw a crack within the veneer and thought, I'm an idiot. I screwed up. So I went into not enough knowledge, didn't know what that meant, redid the crown. It looked horrible. Then I had to send the patient out to, luckily, a colleague that was a higher end cosmetic dentist to fix her and thought I screwed up. But it was my data set was wrong. I didn't have enough answers. I didn't have the right kind of answers. That's when I went looking and found John Coyce. Because only then I figured after all the COIS training, could I have black and white answers based in research, evidence based? All of that, kind of started me off on a path of just better. How do I be better? How do I know more?
Yeah, it's a great philosophy. One of my philosophies, actually, the license plate of my car is Kaizen, which is a Japanese word that speaks to continuous improvement. And I think that word probably applies to your journey as well. in terms of what you decided to do professionally? Because that COIS pathway takes a lot of dedication, but it was very rewarding, obviously, for you.
And another, if I may interject, a pivotal moment was finding Matthew Syed, Black Box Thinking. He's an author. He was a former table tennis champion. I didn't find that out till years later, but John Coyce brought him to a Coyce symposium, and to hear him speak about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, the Kaizen principle of 1% better being growth mindset, airline industry versus healthcare. If anybody hasn't seen a TED talk he did, it's fabulous. It really set the tone for I wanted to implore a culture of continual improvement, because anything short of that is you're stuck in a fixed mindset and you don't grow and you don't learn and you don't develop. And to me, that's a detriment not only to yourself as a provider, but to your entire team. We have such an opportunity to grow our team along with us.
Yeah, that's a great point. I often say that, we work in an operatory and we work in a space maybe the size of what? Maybe not a tennis ball, but it's something in that vicinity. And sometimes our perspective actually gets kind of stuck in those confines in a sense, kind of in a figurative way of speaking. And so we often have to challenge our own paradigms and really focus on growth or we can get stuck, I think, in this profession. So it's a great philosophy. I think it serves you well. And I think it's why you're where you are, where you're a fabulous clinician, but you're also moving on to other things in life as well. So it's good. What were some, if you look back as an owner, what were some of the early challenges that you faced in that role? And how did that really shape how you lead now?
Good question again. Early on, I thought I had to have the answers. I had to have the answers. And to the point that I felt like I was verbal vomit on the patient, and it was not pleasant. I had a couple excellent hygienists through the years and assistants. Later, I shifted to wanting the better question versus the better answer. Meaning, I'd rather be quieter than and ask the right question than feel like I had to have the answer. I think it's an insecurity we all have coming out of dental school because we've been on the spot. We've been in, an oral dissertation on the trigeminal nerve. We've had to have answers. And I think as we grow and mature, we realize we don't have to have the answers. We could take a hot minute, sit back, take a breath, take in data, bring a patient back, do a consultation, weave in the team's input, then disseminate, maybe some solutions. So I think it's, again, a shift from feeling like I had to know it all to feeling like it's okay to stay curious and really not know and stay in that place for a minute until I'm sure, and the team input is huge in that, right?
Yeah, great philosophy, great approach, and also more fulfilling as you go through this journey, which has a really high burnout rate, as we know. And I think having a philosophy that really resonates with you like that is a key to fulfillment in dentistry as well.
Another thing that helped shape it that I guess only as a female I would experience is having a child, because I thought I would drop the child in the field, come back within 2 weeks, I was ready. I was a performer, I'm ready. I had a C-section, I was out 6 weeks. My entire team made a pact not to call me once during that 6-week period, and at that point, there was no hope of micromanagement. I was MIA, right, for 6 weeks. They took over my practice. We hired a young associate. They told him where to go, what to do. It worked beautifully, and it gave me such, a wonderful time and place to back up and say, I am not it. It is an entire team effort. I am one part of that puzzle, and I hope to back up more and more and be less of the piece of the puzzle, more of a piece of the dynamic, if you will. So that was a huge shift in the way I led and managed, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, that also tells me that you, before that time, had probably put some systems in place so that that could happen. And I think that's a mistake. We often lead by default, and things just take their own path, which is also sometimes known as chaos. And so, obviously, you had done some of that. If you look back and you started putting systems in place, what were some of the very first systems that you focused on, and why?
We would decided I took over kind of a pin amalgam buildup practice, and I wanted to lightning quick shift it to the COIS mentality, quadrant care dentistry, looking at the whole mouth, not an individual tooth. So systems for me meant almost every system, which meant I needed full team involvement, which then translated to me working on myself first of kind of a big pro con list of what do I really want? Do I want chaos? Do I want systems? I'm a system person, I figured out. I don't want chaos. I want to nail down as many variables as I can ahead of time so that the practice runs smoother in my mind. So I met with my team. I paid them an extra, usually just a half an hour at the end of the day. We met every Wednesday night and we talked through the day. We incorporated not only a team huddle in the morning, but I kind of jokingly called it the autopsy of what died during the day. It's kind of negative connotation. You can do diamonds and dust. There are other ways to phrase that, probably more, an improvement. But we would talk about what did not go well. That takes a mature team to be able to not take those conversations personally. So I think it was a multitude of things, but I looked at every system. I started with how do I want that new patient or any patient to feel from the minute they touch our practice, meaning that first phone call. Of course, the website would be more predominant now, but it's what is the first touch when they walk in the door? Excuse me, what do I want them to smell, hear, feel? How do I want information transmitted from that initial call or discussion at the front desk to us in the back clinically? Where do I want the patient to move through the practice? What looks good? What doesn't look good? I started with that as my focus for how do I want that to go? And I went from the beautiful thing is in my partnership practice, having 10 bays, 4 hygienists, I would see a new patient and then have to go do 4 hygiene exams. And I'd go home every night wanting to throw up. I didn't sleep. I really felt like I cannot give quality care. So that, as much as it's a negative experience, bloomed into this positive shift of I want that patient to be my number one. I want all communication to be behind the scenes. I don't want anyone to be interrupting me during patient care. It just went from I think sometimes you need to know more of what you don't like to realize what you really want or like. But anyway, in the second practice I had that was my solo practice, that was my start. And then we just went system by system from there. And I also, again, encouraged every team member to bring up, give me a high low. What went well? What isn't going well? What system do we look at next? And I think the more you enable your team to be open, honest, and the more we don't elicit our defensive response, which is in all of us, the more we be vulnerable, right? And I love Brene Brown. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother podcast, but just the getting in the ring and the more we open up to that experience and be vulnerable with our team, the better end product we all have.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you touch on a few things there that are so important, but the whole idea of a practice journey is something that we often overlook. A lot of practices just see the patient coming in the office as that's the touch point, but there's so many other touch points, and to see it as a journey through different stops along the way and then really intentionally develop that, not just by yourself, but with the team is a really good way of looking at it. And obviously, as you matured as a leader, you figured out how to involve that team more and more. And I think a good team is obviously key to success, and so are like mentors and coaches and just different philosophies. You mentioned even Brene Brown. Obviously, you've been with the Kois Center. Talk a little bit about that part of your support system and how it really helped guide your decisions during key points in the growth of your career.
So I think, again, going back to you have to know self, what works for you best. I realized I needed a more continuous path. I'd done Seattle Study Club. I called them one hit wonder lectures, and I'd had mentors here and there. And I figured for my, I guess for my best output or end product, I wanted something that would be a continuum that I could rely on year after year. And for me, that became Kois. It could be, I'm sure, Spear, Pankey, Dawson. In that realm, you can't go wrong. But it was really wonderful to be able to go through all of John's courses and have that input from others. There's also, once you're a graduate of his program, you're on a chat line. So you have about 300 to 350 other voices. So literally during the clinical day, if I get into something, maybe I want to know about internal whitening, research stats, or what would they use? I can literally in real time send out a text and ask for help. And to me, that's so critical. And to set yourself up with other mentors that I've called John Coy choice, and said, "What would you do in this tough case?" And it's okay. I think it's back to Matthew said, it's okay to fail. I think the more we discuss our failures, and that was another reason I picked John Coyce, is above all the other lectures at the time, he discussed a failure of his and he put it up on the screen and it was ugly. He was right. It was total failure. But I appreciated it because I'm like, we all fail. And I think it's wrong thinking to put yourself down. We should embrace them as that's how we learn. If I didn't fail at that veneer, I would not have been propelled to take extra education. We don't understand what happened when we succeed, but we have the beauty of understanding when we fail, how do we fix it? How do we get out of it? How would we do it different next time, right? So I don't know if that totally answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah, and I think we appreciate mentors that are willing to talk about their failures because a lot of times you go to some of these courses and it's all just all the success and look at what I did and we all have failures in this profession and so we can learn from it and I did take a few courses from Kois as well and I appreciate that about him. He's very proficient, but he's also got a humility about him that gives him that extra strength.
And he creates that culture. I think it's walking in a room. If any of us walk in a room and somebody's talking about their P&L and how much they earned, I'm turned off instantly. I don't think it's money. I think it's somebody else is saying how they succeeded with a patient and now they get to see their family and they have that honor. To me, that I'm intrigued.
Yeah. And what's so great about this profession is that if you focus on that, then the rest of that comes
Naturally.
later. So you don't need to focus on that. You focus on the right things and you will be rewarded because you're adding such value to people's lives and they appreciate that and reward you for that. So
True.
it's a good philosophy and it's a really fulfilling philosophy, I think. And I think we often get that as a profession, we get that backwards, or we start people come into the profession maybe with that backwards and focusing on the profit over the fulfillment. And actually, when you focus on the fulfillment, and adding the value, then the profitability follows. Doesn't mean you can't ignore that piece. It's very, very important. We talk a lot about that, but it's just a matter of getting it all right into the right framework.
Very
So,
true. And it's
yeah.
looking for people that can support your individual mission. Something I didn't learn till later in life is I want every team member to have empathy. That is huge. I want hungry, humble, smart, but I need empathy. If we don't have empathy in healthcare, it's not a good fit, leader or employee, right?
So true. Such a powerful piece of all relationships, really. Um, So, I mean, obviously, you've had this really interesting journey, and if you could go back and you could talk to your younger self, you're just starting out as a practice owner, and you could give yourself really one piece of advice, what would that be from where you sit now?
Trust in self, trust in, I didn't trust myself and my wants, I guess, enough. I was insecure, so then I jumped right into a partnership thinking it'll be better, safer in numbers, safe, 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 instead of, you know, getting out there. And maybe that's just a natural way of things. Maybe we all need to, try on different coats and see what truly fits for us because we don't know in the beginning. I did an associateship for 3 years, but I wanted to buy. I thought I had to be an owner and it seemed safe to be in a partnership. And that well, let's just see. We had a brownout, a blackout in the practice. We had an earthquake in the practice in Seattle, not normal. We had 5 front office people. All 5 were on Prozac at the same time. The office manager had 3 grand mal seizures by that point. Because picture 3 individual leaders coming to her, trying to have her be the go-between. It was a hot mess. And I look back and go, I learned volumes about what not to do. So maybe it's just the way it had to go, but I think if I could look back and say, just trust in yourself and be more confident in what you wish. And again, it's back to the Brene Brown. I shouldn't have listened to critics at the time. I should have just gone and blazed my own trail, but you don't know till you know.
No, that's good. So maybe just piggybacking on that, there's something when you look back that you feel like maybe you waited too long to do, but once you did it, you wish you'd done it years earlier? Is there anything that you see, or do you just not really have that kind of regret looking back?
I wish I'd done koi sooner. I can blame it on the money. I think it was just, well, it was certainly fear of the money. I took out a loan for it ended up being about 130,000 to get through all of Kois, I think, because I did a couple courses again. And I think I took out, loans during part of it. And then towards later on, right, it does pay for itself. And then I was able to take it out of cash flow. But I think I would be braver sooner. It's again, I think it takes bravery and courage to jump out and do those things when you don't see an initial ROI. But I guess it's just it's also trust in, learning what you like to do is okay to do. Once I freed myself up from, for example, I love doing extractions in the beginning, and then I realized they are the most problematic for my schedule. It would take too long. I would run behind. I'd get stressed out. So I think just freeing myself that, okay, it's okay to not do the things you don't care to do or that are too unpredictable.
Yeah, and I like what you said about just making that investment in the COIS pathway. I think we see that a lot too. Like dentists come out and they have some clinical skill. They need a lot more, but they also need to learn a lot about business and entrepreneurship. And it's hard sometimes to make that investment in some kind of a really solid mentorship business program. But you and I both did that early in our careers. And I mean, I did it, I don't know if you did two different programs, but
Mm.
just
No, just
we
the
did
one.
one that was similar.
Yeah.
But, I did 2, and it's like, man, I remember I took out a loan too to do that. I was like, "Is this really worth it?" But I would go back and do it all over again because the ROI on that was immeasurable in many ways, back to the fulfillment issue as well. It helped me really tune into what I wanted and create a very profitable practice. So, yeah, I think that's hard though when you're a young dentist coming out.
Very, especially depending on, the interest rate. I think at the time for me was 13%. Oh, it's a year, yeah, we're talking about there's a year-long kind of a consulting program, but it did run you through all of the pros and cons and the P&L and L and how to look at it in percentages and where you should be, and 4% lab bill unless you're doing a lot of crown and bridge, and then a higher lab bill is great. But knowing that those are your metrics and knowing kind of what to look at, and I think there was a time where I didn't know what to look at. And as I get on in the career, I really look at my profitability per hour. I want to know what is that target? Where am I at? And then how is my case acceptance? And what are my new patient rates? And, all that you kind of get really lean on. And another one that I look at later in my career that I did not know to look at in the beginning was what's my perio percentage? How many people are running through my 3 month and 4 month? And, what does that look like? On average should be 33%. So if that's not there, then I'm not diagnosing properly. Right. It's just things like that that you start to get wise about. And then you see other practices and you can really be helpful in other practices and, look at their target and their metrics may look totally different. It's been intriguing for me to see what different practices are out there. There was one on the East Coast that did only extractions, dentures, implants, and crowns, no hygiene. That's crazy, but it was successful. Anyway, so many different things we can do in dentistry. It's figuring out what do you want to do.
Yeah, such an important part of it. And so as you continue on this journey, how do you continue growing at this point in time? I mean, what type of are you looking at courses or mentorship? Anything on the personal side that just really important to you as you kind of move into this? You're not entirely post-clinical, but you're post-ownership at this point.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, definitely post ownership. I love to read. I know you do too. Just being an avid reader and staying intrigued and passionate. I've done a lot on the health side of dentistry. I think there's a beautiful space for crossover between medicine to dentistry. We're not, it is not like the cadaver in dental school. They don't cut off the head. It's not Vegas. It doesn't stay there. So it's been wonderful to look at the full connection and the systemic approach. I just think I'm sure we're going to have, so many other things beyond a salivary assay that we can look at in the future to really help diagnose earlier, what's happening with people. But I think just staying current and looking at big business. I love to really dig into what makes other businesses great. What are other leaders doing? I was just reading yesterday about Delta, the trajectory and their CEO and how fascinating it is that he chose people over profit margin. And I think that's not seen enough nowadays. And I'd like to have us in dentistry really realize if we can't take care of our teams, we don't deserve to be leaders. I think there's such I want to implore everyone, listening, you should be being a steward of not only the practice and the metrics as we discussed, but your team and their health. It should be your health as well. There was a time and place where I thought the patient should come first, the patient's king, and now I realize it's really the team, the culture is king, you know? That that'd be my shift.
So true, especially in a time when staffing and keeping a team together is more of a challenge maybe than it's ever been, certainly in our career span. And I think that that's an overlooked key to retention and with a team is really having a focus on culture and taking care of people and seeing the wellness of your team is really your first customer. You have to take care of them for sure and they will help take care of you. Kind of a
Yeah.
basic philosophy, right?
It's so true. We had one year we had a gentleman come in, he was a firefighter and he did CPR training and he was talking about you're gonna crack ribs and all this gruesome stuff. And he said, okay, who's gonna go down in this practice? Who's gonna go first? And we all kind of looked a little bit at the older hygienist. It was nothing personal. She just didn't look healthy. And he said, nope, nope, not her. It's gonna be the doctor. She's going down first. So you better be nice to your team. In a myriad of ways, that's very true. But yeah, I think it's that, if we can take care of our team, there's a beautiful flywheel, take care of ourselves, know what we want, create a clear message, have the team follow. If they don't, if we've created a strong culture and someone comes in and then quits, great. That's addition by subtraction. Allow them to, deselect. And then you get to select, other people that if they will think what you think, right? If you create a strong enough message and you believe in a certain way, then you will attract those people. And just keeping it real that it's okay for people to not be with you long term. You're not here to please everybody. Same with patients. It's you like me, great. You don't, there's the door. That's okay, right? It's a choice. It's a life choice. And the hope is you're kind enough, right? You attract more than you turn off.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think there's so much more that we could cover here. There's so many different directions to go, and you have wealth of experiences and background. But we're kind of up on time today, and I think it's a great introduction to your story, and there's so many good lessons there. If you're willing, it would be maybe kind of cool to have you come back sometime in the future, and maybe we could talk a little bit more specifically about some of your other philosophies around periodontal health and the recare program. And I know you have some pretty unique ways of looking at that, and that might be a really neat topic for us to cover as well for dentists.
Well, I would love to anytime. And I'd also love to come back on and interview you.
That's scary. No, you guys didn't hear that. She didn't. Okay, we're out of time. We'll see you later.
Drop the mic.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule today. And I know there's just a ton of value there for all of us.
Thank you, Greg. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, you too. Goodbye.